And as always, welcome back to my Starcraft channel, where I'm gonna be commentating what should be a really fun and engaging, but also mostly an interesting game between 458, who's playing the purple Protoss on the bottom left of the map, and his opponent is none other than Asad. asadlls1. I'm just gonna call him Asad. Not that Asad, but I don't know how to pronounce how this player intended for it to be pronounced. I'm just gonna call him Asad. So, not to be confused with that guy in the Middle East. This is just Asad. He's playing the yellow Zerg, and he's starting off with a drone, moving into his choke, placing it on the bottom side of that little entrance there. So he can place probably another hatchery right above it. Or he's going to plug it up with two Sunkens. Not too sure what he's going to do, but that's the most likely approach. And actually, I'm quite interested in this approach from 458 here. He's going for a mid build. And I've honestly never seen this guy go for a mid build. I've seen him like at least 70, 80 replays of this guy. And this is the first time I'm seeing him doing a mid build. So I'm really curious to see how he pulls off the mid build. And honestly, just like another note, I wish I knew who Asad was, but I have no idea who this guy is. And I assume most people watching the channel by now know who 458 is. And if you don't know who 458 is, he is a Korean Protoss, pretty much just a Protoss player. He can't really, I mean, he can play the other races pretty darn well, but from what I've heard from the other players that I do know, that have played against his Terran and his Zerg, they think that his Terran and Zerg are pretty bad, so he's pretty much just a one-trick pony on the Protoss. There he's just placing down a really well-placed pylon there, which denies both these spots here where you would ideally place two Sunkens. Instead, now you have to place two Sunkens in the front there. Plus, two Sunkens have also been delayed. Placing another pylon there, which makes it even harder. But the pylon is going to go down to these Zerglings. And the Zealots honestly came out a little bit too late. I'm not sure what that is about. Maybe it's the distance towards the middle from the corner spot. But those Zealots were out a little bit too late. Allowed these two Sunkens to come up. A lot of spending onto those Zerglings though, so that is in favor of 458, unless Asad manages to deal some damage with those Zerglings, but I don't think he will be able to do much with those Zerglings. There's already 5 Zealots out there. Let's keep track of the health bars, and none of those Zerglings have gone down. He splits them up, almost manages to snipe the probe. Great control from 458 there. The way he did that is he clicked on the minerals inside of his base to make sure that the probe could phase through the Zerglings. Didn't get stuck. He's going to lose it regardless. But 458 has bigger problems on his tail. He missed that these Zerglings entered his base. And now he has to pull his probes off of his minerals. Well, that's a great advantage that Asad managed to build up here despite having to spend, or despite, he didn't have to spend, but despite spending so much minerals on those early Zerglings, that this is the most he got out of it. He killed the probe here, but he pretty much lost all of the Zerglings without any return damage. He did manage to get his choke up with those Zerglings, so that is pretty much as intended, but I think he overspent a little bit on those Zerglings, so he's a little bit delayed. Asad throwing out the haha, because he thinks that 458 is not going to break through, but no, 458 is throwing out the counter BM, because 458 definitely thinks he can break through this Sunken defense here, but he's wrong. Asad was right. The Sunkens in the back are finishing up, and 458 is pulling back to those shield batteries, restoring the shields on his Zealots. Unconventional, but it's somewhat working in favor of him, because there are 2 Sunkens here, 4 Zerglings, more Zerglings, so this is Asad is even spending more minerals on his Zerglings. This is like, he's already spent over 500, 600, maybe even 800 minerals on those Zerglings so far into this game. And that's a lot of minerals not going towards any static defense, or not going towards hatcheries and a bigger economy, or not going towards drones. Which means that the longer Asad is being forced to spend minerals on those Zerglings, he's gonna be staying alive. He's gonna be falling behind further and further behind on 458 the more he spends on those Zerglings. But sometimes you're forced to spend on Zerglings, which in my opinion is always, not always, but in most cases it is detrimental to your transition into like the mid game after the 540 or 530 minute mark. But 458 started this gas quite late. Second Nexus also quite late. Cybernetics Core is just on the way, about to finish up. Now adding on more pylons because he's gonna get supply stuck. Actually, he got supply stuck. So another little oversight from 458 there. He's gonna lose a pylon even, unless he cleans up those Zerglings quick enough. But two Zealots, 3 Zealots are now inside the base, trying to stop this creep colony from coming up. He manages to cancel it. Now there's a couple of drones gonna go down to those Zealots. A single one down. Asad is doing a pretty good job of keeping them alive. Okay, 2 drones went down. Now a couple of Zerglings are coming in. A 3rd drone goes down. Great harass from 458. This means he's even built himself a bigger lead over Asad. If we disregard the fact that 458 was supply stuck for quite a long time, which stopped his production, but he's got that second Nexus up, meaning his probe count is going to be rocketing up steadily, not quick. Used the wrong word there, but it's going to creep up bit by bit. Asad now adding on more hatcheries, even Hydralisk then. And for 650 into the game, he's really, really small. And I'm not too sure how this is going to translate into how we can handle the abuse that's going to be coming out from 458. 458 made 3 robotic facilities at the same time. Robotic support bay coming up now as well. So it means he's going for Reavers because there's no Citadel of Doom, no Templar's Archive. He's going for the Reaver drops first. And before those Reaver drops, he's going to fly these Zealots into the base of Asad. And Asad, once again, has a lot of Zerglings out. Minerals not going towards Hydralisks. Now he is making Hydralisk though, and he's going for Hydralisk speed. But as I've mentioned many times before already, he is quite small. And the game is, as I said many times already, looking in favor of 458. But all comes down to whether 458 can deal damage with those first couple of drops, even with the first drop. Because if you can deal damage with the first drop, if you can make the Zerg expend a lot of units on defending against those Zealots that he might be flying over sometime in the near future. I thought he would fly them over, because that's what most people do, but he's not flying them over. He's instead going to wait for a second shuttle. And after that second shuttle, he's going to fly 8 over at the same time, but Asad can see the shuttles flying over the hill, and both shuttles go down before they can unload even half of its contents. So that's great pickup for Asad. Now it means Asad can, as you can see here, it means he can add on more hatcheries and start focusing on his economy. He's on 27 drones, 8.5 minutes into the game, which is pretty far behind schedule in my opinion. Usually the 8:30, 8:40 minute mark is the point where both the Zerg and the Protoss, given the builds that they did, should be on about the same worker count. But 458 already on 47, 48 against 33 by Asad. And Asad will be ramping up soon. But as the state of the game, where the state of the game is at right now, 458 still has the edge over him. Because 458 can afford to spend more minerals and throw away more minerals than Asad can. And Asad can afford to lose a whole lot less than 458 can. 458 not going for the middle contain, not going for the mid build anymore, not building cannons there on the middle. So he is a little bit exposed, but he is throwing up a small choke. He has 5 Reavers on the way, so even if Asad holds this attack here and decides to go offensive, 458 will have plenty of Reavers behind those cannons to kill those Hydralisks. So here comes the drop. There's mostly Reavers in there. Drop flies in within range of the drones count, and he killed a bunch of drones, about 20 or so, and that's exactly what 458 needed. and exactly what Asad could not afford to happen, because Asad's mineral count, his income is now way lower than it used to be. He's got 24 drones, of which 9 are mining minerals. So he's got 15 drones mining minerals, but a couple more drones are finishing up now, back on 36, but still behind where he should be. And 458 really using these 7 robotic facilities to his maximum advantage, going for pretty much just mass reaver drops inside of the base of Asad. But he's a little bit behind on his shuttles, so I think he mistimed the shuttles just a little bit. So he's gonna make 7 shuttles in one go, which is overshooting it a little bit. So I expect there to be a whole round of Reavers coming out on the second wave here. 7 Reavers at the same time. He even has Templates Archive now, so he can start making Templars. 2 Templars there on the way. And he got more gateways, so he's planning on going for more... Ooh, Scorches from Asad are hunting down those shuttles, keeping those shuttles away. This overlord here is giving him vision. And he's gonna have to unload those Reavers on top of those Sunkens next to the Reavers, next to the Hydralisks. Meaning the Reavers will go down. They do take down at least about 20 Hydralisks or so in 2 Sunkens. But that's definitely not even half of what he wanted to kill there. Well, that's once again a little bit of a comeback for Asad, because 458 didn't get out of his investment what he intended to get out of it. He got maybe half out of it of what he intended. So great placement on those Sunkens here from Asad, knowing that 458 is most likely going to drop his Reavers very close here against just over the hill, because that's the easiest route. Plus Asad can see the shuttles here. So let me highlight that. You can see those shuttles, so he knows exactly when 458 is going to be sending out his shuttles to fly over the hill and drop units over the hill. And I'm sure Asad just keeps checking and making sure. Now he's even sending out a couple of Scorches, and he manages to snipe 3 shuttles in total. Asad is really hanging in there quite well. Even managing to, I think, claw himself back into the game after that. Somewhat, I don't want to call it a bad start. It definitely was a start where 458 should have been able to punish and abuse Asad way harder than he was able to. So Asad is doing a great job of using those Scorches to keep those shuttles at bay and punish 458 for going for this pretty much somewhat one-dimensional approach. Without those Scorches, these Reaver drops would be absolutely devastating, because 458 will be able to look for weak spots inside of Asad's space, but with these Scorches, 458 is pretty much forced to just drop on the edges here. You could go for a frontal push. I'd say he should go for a frontal push here instead of trying to force these shuttles in over the hill. Because Asad can see those... Ooh, he manages to bypass the Scorches. Even the Hydralisks... Alright, he took down a single one of those the shuttles, so a couple of Reavers went down. But he managed to land right next to the Spire. Spire went down pretty quickly. Got about 30 drones dead there. Asad now getting a surround on those Reavers. I'd say this is a great pickup from 458, given that he managed to pretty much circumvent all those Scorches there. Also kind of a misplay from Asad that facilitated the little walk around there. But he dropped there, got a great shot off on those drones, right about around the time that Asad spent a lot of his minerals on Overlords. So he could not afford to lose that many drones, because his mineral count was quite low. As you can see, his drone count is not even back up to 45. Well, once those 9 drones finish, he'll be up against 47, but he was over 60 at that point. So that is the pickup 458 needed. So it's a little bit of a back and forth. Even though there's not much fighting, it's pretty much an economic back and forth of investment and failing or managing or succeeding to get returns on the investments both players are making. It is kind of... I do think 458 should take care of these Overlords hanging here on the hill. Like he's doing with this Overlord, he's forcing it back to the hill, but now we can no longer attack it. Going for a very small frontal attack. Will probably take down 2 or 3 Sunkens. But he's pulling back those Dragoons. Oh no, those Dragoons are just tripping out, because that's what Dragoons do, they trip out. A couple of Zealots drop here on the other side of the choke. But a massive amount of... Wait, was a drop happen there? Damn it, I was focused on the wrong things there for a little while. So it looks like Asad got dropped again and lost pretty much the entire chunk of his entire drone count. And got it reset all the way back to the 38 count. And that is after he made his drone. So he had about 12 drones left. Made a bunch more because he had some minerals sitting in his bag. But 458 is very slowly digging a hole for Asad that Asad just cannot seem to get out of. He does have a nice choke here, a couple of nice lurkers behind the choke. Scorches spread out as well. Lurkers around his main, lurkers on the side there against Reaver drops on the low ground. So he is setting himself up really nicely, really using what he does have to its maximum efficiency in my opinion. Aside from this lurker here, the lurker is kind of burrowed in a random position. There are a bunch of observers out for 458 now, so 458 can keep pushing this front here. 458 has decided to discontinue his mass Reaver drops because he noticed that they weren't getting the results he intended. One of them did, but I'm sure he intended to deal way much more damage. And beautiful storms from 458 coming out there, taking out the entire Hydralisk mass that Asad had left. I was burning up a couple of lurkers there. Those zealots just walking into their impending dooms. I love this location here for Sunkens around the corner, making it... They can pretty much just fire this entire range here. Let's drop out there. And it's harder for these Dragoons to target these Sunkens because they are behind the hill. Maybe I can highlight it. As you can see, it's harder for him to focus on them. Specifically for the Reavers because they cannot really fire around the corner all that well because it forces those Scarabs to bug out. And the Dragoons have to pretty much just all ball up in this small portion here if they want to hit these Sunkens. So that's a great positioning on those Sunkens. Putting them there on the sides behind the hill. Abusing pretty much the range and the way Dragoons work. Asad back on 70 drones, but only on 3 gas, so his gas count is very low. He's pretty much just forced to make Scorches, although his Spire has died, so he can no longer make Scorches. And there now is a mass Reaver drop coming down over the hill, and this time Asad does not have an answer to it. He's going to have to get a good surround off, but his Hydralisk count is quite low. He's got a couple of lurkers there in the top side, but his lurkers are going to have to come down. He manages to dodge the storms, but the secondary storm wave is taking down all of those Hydralisk 3 Reavers left. 458 still has a lot of shuttles. He's just going to load up all of his units into the shuttles and fly them over the hill. There's an observer there too, so those lurkers are going to be going down. Once he has those units in there, 458 now dropping closer to the spores, out of the range of those lurkers. These Dragoons storm there. This Templar will be a huge threat. He's going to storm those lurkers there. A frontal attack is happening as well, I assume, by these 2 Templars. They're just running through the deaths. He gets a storm off on those lurkers. But the lurkers manage to burrow up. He's going to try to target focus on the lurkers, but the Dragoons go down before 458 can take those lurkers down. And now Asad is going to be ramping up. He's going to be adding a lot of gas here on the side because he's got a lot of drones. His bank is quite large. And I expect him to be adding on a bunch of hatcheries as well. For how many shuttles does 458 have here? 12 shuttles in total. Wait, 13, 14 shuttles in total. That's a lot of supply. But I assume he's going to be loading them all up. Well, he's not loading them all up, because he physically cannot load them all up. He's going for a frontal attack there. Going to try to go for another drop. There's a lot of spores there, so he decides to pull back because he knows he cannot fly in over those spores. He's going to just try to fly in and look for an opening. He manages to get all his... He managed to get the Templar down there on the low ground, but the lurkers immediately took down the Templar, so that was a fail drop from 458. That's just why lurkers around your main as drop protection are just amazing, because they immediately take down Templars and Zealots. They don't immediately take down Reavers, but if you have enough units around your main, Reavers go down quite quick as well. This looks to be another attempt for a mass drop here on the side. He's dropping a couple of... Ooh, he's doing a shift unload and shift send back. That's a beautiful, beautiful little mechanic that he's using there. Reavers taking down all of the Sunkens there in the front. There's no observer. Observer's hanging a little bit far in the back. Hydralisk going in. Hydralisk dying quite quick. Now a real drop is coming in here as well, while Asad is distracted. There's a single Reaver there in the back, just outside of the range of the lurkers. That's really amazing. He manages to pick it up. Shuttle goes down, and the attack ends up pretty much just killing a bunch of Hydralisk here. I wish I could have focused on the fight here, but drones, in my opinion, were way more important because he lost those drones. Given that even with those drones still alive, he's only on 500 minerals. If he had lost those drones, the game would have been over, in my opinion. Completely over. Because he could have just pushed the front in here and then walked Asad over. But instead, the game extends itself as Asad manages to successfully keep his drones alive and fight those Reavers here on the bottom side off. Interesting. But it actually winds up doing quite some damage here. He's going to take down those Sunkens there from the high ground. I like that drop on the high ground. There's a Templar there. Templar storms on a couple of Lurkers and Hydralisks. Hydralisks spreading themselves out, dodging the storm. And it looks like 458 has kind of once again failed in doing significant damage. He did take down the remainder of the Sunkens on this side. A couple of Lurkers there as well. Hydralisk is now pulling back because another wave of Dragoons is coming in. Shuttles have been loaded up here. Filled with Templars and Zealots. They're going to drop those Zealots there on the low ground on top of those Lurkers. The Templars are the things that are important. He managed to get a Storm off. He gets a Storm off and kills all of the drones that Asad had on his minerals. Only 747 minerals left. And I think that is the GG here because 747 minerals left is not all that much. He does have 26 drones on his gas. He can pull them off, put them on his minerals, but I don't think he's going to go for that one. Going to clear out the middle here. Another drop has been loaded up for 458. Asad is not pulling back his Hydralisks. They're having a conversation. A lot of units being dropped here on the low ground, but there's a Lurker right next to it. He pulls up the Observer so he can kill those Lurkers with the Reavers. Reavers now going to be staying alive. Middle is dying here, and Asad calls the GG. Asad calls the GG. Somewhat of a close game. Asad never really managed to move out. Because 458 hit Asad pretty hard at about every single crucial moment. Like every single time that Asad was about to propel himself into a state of being able to produce at infinitely, pretty much. Just spam out massive amounts of units. Every single time that was about to happen, 458 managed to land a drop on the drones, kill those drones, and reset Asad's production capability back to 0 pretty much. Because he was forced to make drones. Nothing really worked out for him. 458 very slowly crept up on him. And honestly, these moves are way harder to hold than Asad made it look. Because Asad made holding most of these attacks from 458 look somewhat easy. In terms of that, he did lose a lot of units, but there was very little amounts of material damage. 458 never really managed to break in. Although here we can see that he did manage to break through, aside from that one Lurker and one Sunken. But he never really managed to break into the base. He managed to drop units into the base, but pretty much those units just stayed on the edges of the base, killing units. Like mostly killing Hydralisks, but eventually then he will lose his own Reavers and the units that he dropped inside of the base of Asad. But Asad never really felt threatened all the way back to his mineral line, aside from those drops on top of his mineral line. So well played from Asad. I did not expect him to hold out for that long, given that he invested so many minerals in Zerglings at the start. And yeah, nice game. I enjoyed it. Learned a couple of things or two. And I hope you enjoyed this game as well. Also, a small note. Not one of my best casts. Maybe it was, but I felt it was one of my lesser casts, but I uploaded it regardless. Have fun. Good night.